Everyone's pretty tired probably, but I really appreciate you guys coming out here today. My name is Matthew Campbell. I am a Senior Analyst of Visualization and Reporting in Toronto, Ontario. And this is Bar Charts and Pinstripes. This is going to be my personal journey of using Tableau and introducing it into RBC Wealth Management. It's with a little bit of a twist, though. I come to a lot of these events with Tableau hosts, the Tableau conferences, to the road shows that they do when a new version comes out. And I noticed that what happens is Tableau's got a lot of great tools, the developers are working on everything, and they have stuff that can get you to here. But then I go back to the office, and I have a lot of people who are quite comfortable with being here. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to bridge that gap, and I'm going to try to share some tips and tricks that can help you and your organization, especially if you're in the financial world, to be able to kind of help your users adopt Tableau and not just take it begrudgingly, but actually come along with you in your own Tableau journey as well. So why don't we get started? So who's the funny guy with the funny face up here? That's me. My name, as said, is Matthew, and I work in Toronto. I've been with RBC Wealth Management for now the last 3.5 years. I started back on Tableau version 7 and have had a lot of fun as we've gone through 7 to 8, 8 to 9, and now 9 to 10. I wear a couple of different hats at the bank. So I have a programming and database background. I've done a lot of tactical tool building over the years. But I'm also working on my CPA designation as well in Canada. For those who aren't familiar with that, that's the accounting designation similar to what you guys have here in the States. And I, as of last night as well, seem to be the top holder of the score in Donkey Kong. So not bad, I don't think. So where are we going to go today? I've got 5 key areas. So first of all, we're going to talk about what I'm going to call Canada, the land of colorful money. And yes, that is spelt with a U on purpose. We spell a lot of our words with a U up there. And that's just going to be an introduction to Canada business culture, banking culture in particular, and also about my employer, RBC. We're going to talk then about what I'm going to call breaking the bank. And that is where we're going to get into objections that people have with Tableau initially, that skepticism, and how maybe you can overcome that. Next, we'll go into kind of taking things beyond just an initial report, a one-hit wonder success story, and trying to help people build a relationship, and that's what I'll call past performance, is no guarantee of future results. And then next, after that, we'll get into what I'll call cornering the market, and that's where we get into some fun stuff that isn't going to be as flashy as some of the stuff that you see here at TC16, but is some of the visualization and tools that you can use in Tableau to do some really creative stuff in Tableau for a bank or for another very cautious organization like an FI. And then at the end, we're going to turn the tables, and you're going to be able to ask me questions, and we'll call that regulatory disclosure. So why don't we get started? And before we go any further, I gave a little bit about me. Let me ask you about you. So how many, just raise your hands, how many people here work for an FI right now? Okay. How many of you are here because you're having your own experiences with kind of getting that traction with Tableau, and you want to be able to kind of bridge that gap that I was mentioning, but you're not necessarily in the bank? Okay. How many of you are here because you took a wrong corner from the cookies over there? And okay, there's an honest person. I like that. So very good. So why don't we talk about Canada a little bit? And for some strange reason, I don't know what happened, but in the last day or so, I've been getting a lot of interest about Canada from people. And I can't understand why. So let me give you a little bit of a tour of Canada. So there's a few reasons to love Canada. And I'm going to talk about some of the ones that you may not know about. So the first is, I'm not going to accept any disagreement on this. We have better football. We have the Canadian Football League. It's only 3-down football, and it's a larger field. And we have a great time. Our season runs from June to November, and so we have our Grey Cup Championship coming up. So if you're ever in the area, you like football, give it a try. It's also on ESPN3, and I just want to make the plug for that because it's great stuff. Poutine. This is a bit of a mystery because, admittedly, of all the dishes, culinary dishes in the world, that I would have thought that the States would have just gobbled up, it would have been poutine. I mean, cheese curds, gravy, and fries. I mean, that's just made for the U.S., but yeah, it's a Canadian dish, and I think it's only moderately making its way into your country right now. And of course, on a more serious note, our excellent banking system. Many of you, I'm sure, are aware of the fact that Canada weathered the financial crisis of 2007, 2008 with flying colors. And part of that reason, was due to the fact that we had a pretty stable and fairly conservative banking system as well, and that earned us a lot of accolades. Now, again, if you're looking at Canada right now, looking at taking a trip, maybe for a day, a year, a lifetime, nowhere's perfect, and so I just have to warn you, there are ways we can improve. The top of mind reason for me, no Chick-fil-A milkshakes. I have to go down 2 hours into Erie, Pennsylvania every time I want one of these things. So just be forewarned, and if anyone from Chick-fil-A is in the audience right now, you guys really need to put a store up in Toronto. One of the other things that you may not know about Canadians, and it's not really apparent with us, is that we like the status quo a lot. And one of the ways you could look at this with Canada is that we take the approach that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so that can be a really good thing. It makes us fairly practical. But it also means as well that it can be a challenge. If you're a disruptor that's trying to bring in something like Tableau into your organization and you know it's a great tool, the culture is very risk adverse again. And if we have a solution that works here already and it's been working since my father's day and my grandfather's day, I don't need to see anything else. And so that can be a bit of a unique challenge, and that's one of the things that I had to face in my own journey of bringing Tableau into the organization. So let me talk just briefly as well about RBC. RBC at one time was known as the Royal Bank of Canada. It is the largest bank by assets in Canada. We have the big five. You may know of some of our other Canadian banks as well, TD, CIBC, Bank of Montreal, or BMO. But RBC is the largest. We also have a presence here in the US as well, particularly in our wealth management segment where I work. We are among the top 5 wealth management firms globally. So that's not just a national number, that we've been very successful in the wealth management space. And interestingly enough, we're over 150 years old. We started in Halifax, Nova Scotia back in the 19th century. We've since moved our head office to Toronto where I work, but we've got a long storied history and have a lot of fun up there as well. So let's dive into this here. So we'll get into what, again, I'll call breaking the bank. How do you kind of chip at that iceberg of resistance to Tableau when you got so many people that are just happy with the status quo? So tell me if you've heard one of these things before. I'm going to go through a couple of real quotes from real people. This is great, but we can't have any filters, right? Just give me a dashboard that just works out of the box, and I don't have to do anything with it. Give me a dashboard with everything. This is the one where they just want the dashboard and have the whole world's information. It's basically like Google on a dashboard is what they're looking for. Tableau is just PowerPoint, right? I don't know if you guys have come across that one before. Can I get this in a PDF? And my favorite, best for last, can I make this exactly like my Excel file that my grandfather crafted out of the long, hard winters of 1930? So we're going to tackle each of these in a little bit here, but before we do that, I want to take you a little bit closer back in time, and we're going to go back to the 1980s and kind of try to understand where people are coming from when you get phrases like this coming up. So who's heard of the MIS, or Management Information System? Okay. So this is a concept, as I said, that goes back to the 1980s. And in the 80s, this was the idea that your leadership of your organization really needed to have all of the information that they needed to make critical decisions for the company at their fingertips. So the MIS came out of it. And it's basically this idea, again, that you can have everything in one view, and you can just look at it and go, okay, well, we got to send more people over here, and we got to cut costs there, and we got to spend more there. And that's where this really came from. But it's still lingered to our day. And admittedly, when you talk to a lot of users, it can give you the impression that they're sitting there like Captain Picard is on the Enterprise, with his staff just kind of looking at the screen going, okay, should we be going after the Klingons today or the Romulans? And that's very much how it feels sometimes with MISs. There's a challenge with this, though, is just as we don't wear stuff like that anymore. A lot of stuff has also changed since the 80s as well, as far as technology. And so remember where we came from, the world that this MIS concept came from. At the time, I don't know about you, but I've heard stories from others that when it came to computers, right, which are so critical to our jobs today, in the 1980s, you may have one computer in an entire floor. Right? And we can't work like that today, but that's where this came from, right? And so it made getting access to this kind of technology very limited. On top of that, you might have had your computer, but it wasn't linked up to the rest of the world. There was nothing like the internet as we know it today. And so being able to transfer your data and move it around and be able to get that access to critical information, which was much harder. And so we had to come up with systems where our data was very stale, right? It was very canned. And so this is a critical thing to remember, because a lot of our users are still kind of thinking like this, because it's been an idea that's persisted for decades now. But the world has changed, and so we really need to ask ourselves, why shouldn't our platform change as well? And maybe we need to look and re-examine whether the MIS as a concept should be abandoned as well. I'm a big fan of C.S. Lewis. You may know him for his most famous work, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He had a good quote here, though, which is, don't let us mistake necessary evils for good. And so one of the guiding principles I'm going to suggest to you as far as when you're looking at developing Tableau dashboards for those audiences that want to kind of nudge you in one direction or the other is that it's very easy to compromise on critical functionality. It's very easy to say, okay, we'll try this out your way and try to see if we can make this work. But you just know in your gut when you're saying that, okay, this is not going to go anywhere good, right? This is going to be very tough. And it's going to lead to a lot of problems down the road. And really what it's going to do is it's going to start to destroy your credibility and the trust that people have in Tableau and your ability to deliver. And so I want you to consider this quote as well, because it's a good principle, I think, that you want to build good solutions. You don't want to build just slightly bad solutions. You want to build good solutions, right? And there's flexibility you can have in that, but you want to make sure that long-term your users are going to be very happy with the solutions that you're delivering to them. And to illustrate the point, I picked this up off of Google. And I don't know about you, but I've seen many a dashboard like this in my time where we're just putting all the information in the world all into one space and saying, there you go, there's your dashboard. And one of the first questions I ask whenever I see something like this, and I'm coming into a new project or working with a new team that has something like this, and that's kind of, you just know that's where they want to move it towards, is, what's the story here? What are you trying to action on? What are you trying to do? What do you need to know, right? And that's not obvious here from this dashboard. It's very hard to look at this and say, okay, it's obvious that we all need to go to Cleveland and mourn for the Indians and for their loss to the Cubs, right? It's just it's just a lot of information that's just kind of thrown out on the screen there. All right, so let's go back to our quotes here. And what I'm going to do, as I said, is I'm going to go through each of these 5 quotes. I think that they represent a different idea. And what I want to give to you guys is kind of a methodology that you can use to address each of these issues. Now, your own issues, the people that you guys work with back at your workplaces are going to be slightly different. This comes in a few different flavors, but you can interchange the concepts that we go through, and you want to use the tool that works best for you. So let's go through these one at a time, and we'll start with this one. This is great, but I don't want any filters. And again, I don't know if you've come across many people like this, but I've had a few over the years. And so one of the things I want to suggest as a best practice when you're dealing with people that just don't want to have that interactivity, just don't want to do anything, they just want the truth up there, is Tableau, we're all developers to a certain degree. We're all technology users. So we like to think of Tableau, and we know it's a data engine, it's a BI tool, it's got a database with a visualization layer on top of it. But at the end of the day, when you look at a Tableau from a different angle, it's really very similar to a website. The same users who are telling you they don't want any filters are usually the ones that are going back home and checking out LinkedIn, and they're poking around on all their different users in their network, or they're checking their stock prices on their phone as well. And again, they're poking around. You're not getting the Dow Jones all on one screen with all the different ticker prices all at once. And so Tableau doesn't need to be any different. And so how do you kind of address that? With that mindset in mind is actions, right? Filter actions, URL actions, they're great tools, because then what you can do is you can click on a single number and have it take you into a deeper story or maybe a different way of looking at the information. And this is something, again, that users will be very familiar with in our world today with social media tools, with the internet, with mobility. They're already doing this in other platforms, and so you can you leverage that familiarity to bring that into Tableau as well. Let's look at the next one. Give me a dashboard of everything, the Captain Picards of the world. So what I'm going to suggest for this one is, again, what I said, that you want to find out from your user not what they want built, but what are they trying to see? What are they trying to solve? What are they trying to do? And then just build that, right? That's the solution that you're looking for. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You're trying to maybe invent a car instead. So a concept I'm going to introduce for this one is you want to start at a tiered level. And the first tier that's usually good, especially when you're dealing with senior management, is a bird's eye view, where you're basically giving a state of the world as it is today, a single number for each KPI, maybe a spark line along the way as well to give them a little bit of insight into the trend. But this is their one number that tells them, okay, here's what we're doing today. And you can use a little bit of color and other techniques in Tableau as well for that. But a lot of users, especially, again, that are of the risk-averse nature, they're not going to be satisfied with just seeing that one number. Okay, we've got 4 issues today, and I don't know what that means. So then you can move on to what I'll call the squirrel's eye view. And this is where you can give a little bit more detail. It's maybe not the granular level that people may think that they want, but now you're getting into a little bit more context. You're getting into trending again. You're getting into maybe doing some filters and some ratios and trying to give a little bit more context around that number and how it compares to other numbers in your data. And then after that, using, again, filters or actions, you can get into the bee's eye view. And this is the very granular level. But this is not where you want to start again. You don't want to be giving, again, the whole Dow Jones index. Maybe what you want to do is you want to start at the Dow Jones, move into, let's say, pharmaceuticals, and then get into a particular ETF that you're trying to look into. And so that's bird, squirrel, and bee just in that line there. What about the PowerPoint users, the people that are just really happy with PowerPoint and they just want to kind of stick with that platform? And what I'm going to suggest for this one is that it's very tempting because Tableau and PowerPoint are very similar tools. They're very visually stimulating. It's very tempting to say, well, we can do just that. We can take what is in PowerPoint and put it right into Tableau. And that, again, doesn't always work because PowerPoint is a different software tool for a reason. It has its own strengths, it has its own weaknesses, and Tableau has its own strengths and weaknesses as well. And you don't ever want to play to your weaknesses. You always want to be playing from a position of strength. So this is not a comprehensive list on the side there, but you've got maybe just 3 things that Tableau does really well that you can't do in PowerPoint. So first of all, Tableau is a great front-end interface. And what I mean by that is that if I email my VP an email with the PowerPoint today with the world as it is, as of this week, and then the data changes over the weekend, and she comes in again on Tuesday, it's not automatically, she doesn't open up the file and automatically get what Tuesday's data is. Right? You have to do a lot of work, maybe write a macro, whereas Tableau makes that seamless. Right? And on that note as well, if you're using Tableau Server, you can use data extracts very effectively to be able to give people that state of affairs as of the time when they're logging into the system and trying to look at their dashboard. So again, it's got that freshness that we were talking about that was missing back in the 80s, but now we can actually do with Tableau and some of the other tools that are around today. And finally as well, Tableau's interactive, right? I can create a PowerPoint deck like this one, and you can't click on it. I can't click on point number 3 and give you more information on that on this deck without a lot of hassle, a lot of extra work, whereas Tableau is made for that interactive approach right out of the box, right? And so you want to kind of aim the discussion towards using some of these strengths and using that on your in your design principles when you're building out your Tableau solution. And just before we move on, I also have to say as well that saying Tableau is just like PowerPoint, I can understand that argument. Again, they're very familiar tools, but it's almost like saying PowerPoint is just like Excel because I can do tables in PowerPoint. Right? I can just drag my Excel table right into PowerPoint, put it in a deck, and away it goes. But as I say that, that's just not true. Excel does a lot of other things. You could do formulas, you can do some very complex macros that you just can't do in PowerPoint. And so again, keep that in mind and use that maybe as an argument why Tableau maybe needs a little bit of a deeper exploration as a solution for some of the reporting that your PowerPoint users are looking to get. Let's go to the next one. How do I, get this in a PDF? And this is a case where what I'm going to suggest is that, your users aren't always wrong. All right, sometimes they're going to have fairly good ideas. And what we've done at RBC is actually use this to a lot of great success, where we've actually given people the ability to do PDFs, but we've done it with, again, a bit of a twist. And so if you go into Tableau Server, you'll notice on that download icon that appears at the top of your dashboards that you can actually export stuff out to images, you can set up to export out the data, and you can export out PDFs as well. And as a best practice, I'm going to recommend if you go down this road, you'll probably want to have a set resolution of your dashboard so that it fits onto that 8.5 by 11 inch sheet just by default. Because what your users are going to do is they're going to print it out to PDF. They need it all to fit on the screen. and then if they might send it to the printer, they might be emailing it out to somebody else. But again, there's been great success with using this idea up in Toronto, because what happens is that someone who's got a global mandate and they've got different teams in different parts of the country, they might be looking at numbers and they notice that there's something out in British Columbia that they really need to get fixed. So they're going to email their British Columbia person. So they click on British Columbia, they get just that British Columbia view, exported the PDF, and then it's ready to go in an email, right? It's customized for that BC view that you can send out. And then my favorite at the end here, can I just make this just like my Excel worksheet? And what I'm going to suggest on this one is essentially going to be a tactical retreat if you're getting to this stage in the game, right? If someone is so set on their solution that they're just not willing to consider any other ideas, then you have to remember, just like the image that I have up there with the hammer and the screws, is that not every tool that could be used as a solution should be used as a solution, right? You could nail in some screws into your floorboard, but it's going to get messy. You're kind of probably going to bend the screws, and it's just not going to work very well. And so what you want to really be doing is building towards the problem, building a solution towards the problem, not the platform, right? And again, trying to play from that position of strength. And so sometimes it's good to look at these situations, say, even though the idea sounds really exciting, maybe I really want to build this dashboard, this might not be the right time to do this. Maybe there's other groups that I need to be working with instead, the ones that I can do more creative solutions in Tableau on instead, and maybe kind of come back later at a later date when you've built out your rapport a little bit more. So there on the screen, I just have a little summary again of all of the different areas that we've covered, as well as just a very quick summary of how you can approach these. And again, as I said at the beginning, this is very interchangeable. You can take this and you can kind of model it to your problem. It's exactly what I just said on the last screen, is that your methodology needs to accommodate the situation and the group that you're finding yourself with. So now I'm going to give you a demo. I've got a few today that I want to share with you guys. So this first view right here, I'm just going to minimize that. This first view here was an initial dashboard that we built for one of our vendor management groups up in Toronto. And what you'll notice here is that this is not going to be used in the Iron Viz anytime soon. And that's OK, right? Sometimes your users, you have to start off with coming to them at a point. Oh, sorry. Thank you. There we go. OK. Thank you very much. OK, so as I was saying, what you see on here is not a dashboard that would necessarily be making the Iron Viz anytime soon. It's a very standard, essentially kind of a pivot table with a little bit of extra functionality built into it, souped up pivot table. But this was the initial dashboard that we had built for this particular group that was using it here. And the idea behind this is that we wanted to give them their information. They were having trouble kind of getting to access to their data, but they weren't going to be taking a full-blown visualization immediately right out of the box. So we built something that's a little bit more familiar to them. They did a lot of Excel reporting, built out a pivot table, but we added a little bit of a twist here. And that is that, sorry, the wrong slide here. There we go. So we added a little bit of a twist here, which is that we used a little bit of color that immediately can be used to flag any issues that people need to look at on a particular month. And then we also use some parameters as well here that people can use to toggle just how sensitive they want their risk threshold to be. So, if I'm using this as an example, someone's been in my dashboard, they have a risk threshold of 200%, so that means that it's going to be very, very light. It's not going to be flagging very many items. So I can change that around, and maybe let's say that I want to go down to 5% instead here. And as you can see, all of a sudden my data changes, right? And again, if you're doing this solution in Excel, you can do it. It's just there's a lot of functionality that you're lacking. Tableau, again, can make this a fairly easy and flexible solution. And immediately, as soon as we put this out, I think we started out with only 3 thresholds that you see here, but they've actually grown now. They actually really broke it out, and they're getting very valuable information, and just only the information that they're looking for out of this dashboard as well. So when you're considering those initial dashboards that you're building for the groups that are a little more resistant to the Tableau, again, meet them where they are. Kind of maybe use something that they'll be a little bit more familiar with. Okay, so let's keep going. So, let's presume now that you've been to the point where you've gotten a little bit of success with Tableau with the groups that you're working with, and they understand that it's not going to break their whole world, but it's, you don't want this to just be one dashboard and that's it. Maybe you realize that the group has got a lot of other reports that they're building out or that they want to build out, and Tableau could be a great tool. How do you kind of build out that relationship with the group so that you can actually foster a long-term success story between both you and the team that you're working with? So I'm going to start here. I'm going to suggest that with Tableau, you can do a lot of things, but some of the most important things in Tableau aren't even on the surface. They're behind the scenes. And I'm talking about calculated fields and parameters, actions, things that people aren't going to see right out of the box, like the bar charts and the time series that you can build in Tableau. Often you can build some very creative solutions by doing a little bit of coding using the calculated fields. So what I have here just on the bottom of the screen is an example of a report that I had worked on very early on, where there was a PowerPoint deck that just kind of went on forever. It was like 30, 40 slides. And each slide had a different region and a little summary report with a bit of data on what was happening in that region. What we did with Tableau, though, is, and this was back in version 7, so it was before a lot of the functionality that is now available wasn't even there. We put a parameter in that basically allows the user to toggle between the different regions. And not only was it updating the data on the bar charts that were beside the toggle here, but if you look on the bottom, it also gave people the notes that usually come along with those reports. And that changed as well along with the data, so that people were able to read the commentary all on one screen. It was a lot nicer to look at than kind of having to scroll back and forth through all these different PowerPoint slides just to get to the region that they wanted to look at. So I put the code up here on the screen, and again, if this is your first conference, you can actually go after the conference, download this information. So feel free to use this if it's something that you think could be beneficial in your organization. It's a very simple one-line code, though, to do this. You just set up the parameter, you filter it, and then put it so that it only shows one region at a time. The next idea I'm going to present here, as far as how you can kind of build out this relationship, is that it's always better to work together, not work separately. So history is full of lots of examples where collaboration works really well, and there's no reason why Tableau can't be in that bucket as well. So what we've done at RBC is, while my team is kind of the subject matter experts for Tableau now, we've actually set up very specific teams of our choosing that are where we have a power user set up with a Tableau license, and then we help them out to build out their own dashboards. And this has helped out in numerous ways. It's helped to speed up the number of solutions that we're building out using Tableau. It also helps give a sense of ownership to the department as well. If they're actually building out their own dashboards, it's no longer that stupid tool that team over there is using. It's now our tool. And that makes a huge difference as far as winning over support for using Tableau for solutions. So when you're looking at going down this road, a couple of quick things I would just point out you want to consider, because, as I said, some of the teams we've set up with power users, but we do a bit of an evaluation on that as we go along. And two things you want to look at is, you want to look at, first of all, does that team have appetite for the reporting that they'd want to be doing in Tableau? And what I mean by this is, if you have a team and they're only going to really be using Tableau for one report and that's it, and there's nothing else coming down the line, you're not really going to want them to invest in a Tableau license and to having someone learn the tool. This really is a good relationship for those teams that are just overwhelmed with reports, and they're constantly having to build new tools and new evaluations to use in their day-to-day work. The other thing as well is, you also have to look at, is there a path to grow the relationship? And what I mean by this is that it's much easier to work with a group that is actually bought into working with you, as opposed to a team where you're just kind of coming there like a solution seller and saying, I can do this, I just really, really need you to trust me. And there's just not that reciprocal affinity coming back. So you want to make sure that it's going to grow into a partnership and it has a good chance of success for that. And one of the things that helps out a lot with that is having an internal champion in the other team or department that you can work with and can really help to kind of sell Tableau to that group. So as you build out these partnerships, I like to align it to almost like raising kids. I don't have any myself, but I've seen others do it quite successfully. And so what happens when you start out with training up power users is that very initially, just like having a small child, you're going to be spending a lot of time. And this is very crucial. You're going to have to invest a lot of time into helping out those users to learn Tableau. If you just kind of set them up with Tableau license, and they're not quite sure what to do with it, again, and it's maybe like, just something that their boss said, yeah, just kind of look around it and kind of take a bit of interest. It's a great tool to use. It's very easy to learn, but they're going to come across questions. They're going to make mistakes, and they're going to need your help. So you want to make sure that you're giving some kind of structure there and giving some kind of support so that they can actually be very successful, because otherwise they're going to abandon this. Over time, though, kids do grow up, and so they get older. They start doing things on their own. They might come to you once in a while when they have a need or a question, but generally speaking, given a bit of time, your power users can start to kind of develop their own skills and start to do some fairly standard dashboards on their own as well. And so that means that now you can start to scale back that time investment as well and kind of make it more of a as you need help, come to me kind of relationship instead. After a long period of time, though, if this is really successful, then what you find happens with your power users that are very creative is that it's like the father who's kind of wandering around the house, decides to go out to the garage, and what does he find but his kid is working on building a Ferrari. So that's very much what I've had happen with Tableau as well, where we've had some of our power users that have been using the tool for a few years, and they've ended up teaching me stuff. And that's a great thing to have. If you can get your organization to that point where you've got some power users that are learning on their own and actually coming up with creative solutions, then all of a sudden, your organization, your organization and your own team's success is just going to grow exponentially, right? That's going to build that culture of success that is critical to getting Tableau adopted in the organization. Another concept I wanted to share with us as well, if you're going to be working with other teams, is just show of hands. How many people know what I mean when I say the agile concept? Okay, so a good majority. For those who don't know, agile basically is a methodology where you move away from kind of traditional development or traditional project management, where you're just going to do it all in one shot, but you're going to do each component in order and just in the sequence that they come up. Agile kind of breaks that up and says, okay, instead of building out the full dashboard with all of the different views all at once, what we're going to do instead is we're going to maybe just do a little bit at a time. So we'll do a little bit of the dashboard work, do a little bit of the testing, get that out there, get it out to the users. And this is great because this means that your success is much faster to market than what you would be doing otherwise if you were doing a traditional approach. So how does this work with Tableau? I've got a couple of different examples, and I'm sure there's many, many more that you could use and apply the agile methodology to. But two of my favorites are on the left there. You see where I've got one dashboard that becomes 3 dashboards. Basically, what you can do is start with one dashboard. You might have more information at the time. Your users might want to get that information into the system. But you can say, hey, look, let's just build this one out together, get it out there, get you comfortable with managing this report. And then once we're done with that, we get a little bit more feedback, and then we can go and build out a second or a third dashboard. And then there's a much greater adoption rate as well. On the right, another way that you can handle this is you can start again with that bird's eye view, which is kind of represented by the top, where you have all the totals. And then maybe down in a version 2 or 3, you can look at, okay, well, maybe now we want to put regional information into the report as well. Right? We just wanted to have it out there so people could get used to using something like this. And now we're going to build it out a little bit further and give them the deeper insights that now they're going to be coming and looking for. On my team, one of the other ways that we've been very successful with this as well, kind of managing all these different relationships with all these different teams, and this very much plays into the power user model, is to use a production workflow. And so we use SAS on our back end to do a lot of our data modeling. So our users send us their data, we do the modeling, we store it in SQL Server, and then we'll use Tableau and store the extracts in order to get the information to our users. This is great because if you're worried about whether you want to have power users on your system and if they're going to blow up your Tableau server, you do it this way, and that way you know exactly what those extracts have, you know how much information there is, and you've got a good degree of control over just what's going to be happening on your environment. So next demo I just want to quickly go through here. There we go. So I'll go through this fairly quickly here. This is a dashboard. As you can see, now we're getting a little bit more into the visualization piece. But it's actually got a story behind it. So I got married about a year after I joined RBC. And while I was down in Florida on my cruise, one of our directors, who was kind of my internal support, the person that was really spearheading Tableau in his department, he went out and bought 3 TVs. And he emailed me and said, hey, I went out and bought 3 TVs here. And I was wondering if we could put a dashboard together that just refreshes every few minutes. And we can make it like the movies that you see on Wall Street, where you got the tickers and all the information that are sitting there on the roof of the floor. And so a little bit of hackery, a little bit of JavaScript, we got this set up. And as you can see, there's a timestamp in the bottom. Basically, we have this report sitting on 3 different floors now up in Toronto where it just refreshes every few minutes. And what it tells you is who's busy in the department, who's just right, who's maybe a little available for capacity, and then you also have stuff like cross-training and assistance represented there as well. This was great because through the cost savings they did through the cross-training that they were able to do on this report, they were able to save enough money that they didn't need to bring in any students in the summer for co-op, and they were also able to help their staff to get cross-trained, so they were happy they were getting new skills and being able to expand their resume. So finally as well, I just want to go very quickly through just some of the fun stuff that you can start to do once you've built up that trust, once you've built up the relationships in your organization and people have come to accept Tableau. But I'm going to do it again with a little bit of a twist and look at, how do you do this within something like an FI, like a bank, or RBC. So again, as I said at the very beginning, you want to make sure that you're doing good work. You want excellence to be a priority. And this is crucial because if you think back to that quote I had on the screen earlier, if you're willing to kind of compromise on the quality of your solutions, people talk. And people talking can be either good or it can be bad. And because we've kind of stuck to a very strict methodology as far as how we're doing our work and that we want to make sure that we're using Tableau from a position of strength, we've had people talk in ways where that same person that went out and bought TVs while I was on my honeymoon ended up talking to another department just earlier this year, and then they came to us and said, hey, we hear that you've been using Tableau, and we hear that it's been going really well. Can you work with us as well? And that's been able to grow our business internally as far as getting new internal clients that are looking to use the tool. Also, I'm going to put on my finance cap for just a minute here. Everyone's got a finance department, but if you don't know them yet, you got to get to know them if you're using Tableau and trying to get inroads. Accountants have lots of ready-made problems for you to use with Tableau. You just need to tell them about it because they may not know it yet. So what you see on the screen here is just a sample of what I've been working on here earlier in the year. I've been making a contribution margin, which is a type of financial report that accountants use to kind of monitor the expenses and revenues that are coming into the organization. And again, Tableau's ready-made for this. It's able to handle that data, and you can do not only visualizations, but also reports like this that are very handy. And then, of course, what accountant would be complete without having a lot of financial ratios? They could probably rhyme off 20 to you off the top of their head. I'm not a CPA yet, so I can't. But as you can see on the screen there, I've got a few ratios that I've put together in this dashboard. And what you can do with this, for example, is you can look at a branch network and say, how's the branch competing to its region, and then how's it competing to the nationwide numbers as well. These numbers are all made up, so these aren't real. But in this case here, you can see that the turn rate for this particular branch seems to be pretty good across the board. They're beating both their region and the national numbers, except for that one item on the bottom there. But I put this in front of any of the accountants I work with, and they know exactly what's going on immediately. It's just very quick response there. Okay, there we go. So see, I'm learning as we go along too. So what you see here, usually with any big organization, you have a lot of projects going on. We've been working with a project management team in our organization at RBC to basically build out a project tracking dashboard. And so what you see on the screen here is a fictional Picard systems apportionment project that's been worked on. And so what we put together here is a solution where when a project manager is looking at what's going on with the project, they want to get the overall view, and sometimes, as you can see with this example, that can go on for years, but then they also want to see what's going on today. So what I put together is a parameter, again, allowing us to toggle between the whole project lifespan, and then if you go choose time frame here, it's getting cut off a little bit, but basically I'm only looking at August and November right now, and now you can zoom in and you can see, okay, well, this is what the fall is looking like now instead, and you can see all the different events that are happening during the fall. And of course, no project goes over on time, so we have a little bit of extra work here at the end. And so you can put that together so that, again, you can give people flexibility to see both the bird's eye view and then also the squirrel's eye view as well. And so with that said, thank you very much for coming here today. I want to open it up now for any questions that you have.